A crowded airport terminal. A stressed-out gate agent. A black woman just trying to get home. The situation explodes when the agent Karen Foster spots her target. A simple request becomes a vicious power trip. A question about a carry-on bag turns into a full-blown security alert. "I'm calling the police," Karen shrieks, accusing her of being aggressive. "You are non-compliant, and you are impersonating a federal officer." But Karen has no idea who she is talking to. She is about to make the most catastrophic, career-ending mistake of her life, and it's all being caught on camera. Chicago O'Hare, Terminal 1 Gate C-22. It was the dictionary definition of a pressure cooker. A churning sea of anxious travelers, the air thick with the smell of stale coffee, Cinnabon, and the faint kerosene and ozone tang of jet fuel. It was 5:04 p.m. on a Tuesday, and the 5:30 p.m. flight to Washington, D.C. DCA was already flashing delayed in judgmental orange text. Dr. Imani Hayes stood just outside the chaotic boarding scrum, her back against a pillar, trying to steal a final moment of peace. She was exhausted, a deep-in-the-bones weariness that came from 72 straight hours of auditing O'Hare's new runway tarmac compliance. She wore a tailored navy blue blazer, practical slacks, and comfortable but professional black flats. Her only luggage was a leather briefcase and a standard regulation-size black hard-shell carry-on. She was on the phone, her voice so commanding and precise during her inspections, softening instantly. "I know, baby, I know. I promise Mommy is trying. The flight is delayed, but I will be there to kiss you goodnight. Yes, Kayla, you can absolutely have the purple cupcake before bed. Just wait for me. I love you." She hung up just as the garbled voice of the gate agent crackled over the PA. "We will now begin boarding Group 2 for Flight 849 to Washington Reagan." The gate agent, a woman in her late 40s with a severe blonde bob and a name tag that read Karen, looked as frayed as the airport's carpet. Her name was Karen Foster, and she'd been a gate agent for 20 years. To her, passengers were not people. They were obstacles, a series of problems to be processed. She'd already had a long day, a cancelled flight to Denver, a mechanical issue on a plane to Miami, and a stag party that had tried to board with open containers. Imani, a Premier 1K member, and flying on a full-fare, first-class ticket, a standard for her level of government travel, fell into Group 2. She pulled her carry-on's handle and merged into the line. "Group 2. Karen snapped into the microphone, glaring at the crowd. "If I see one more Group 4 trying to sneak on, I will send you to the back of the line. Have your boarding passes out. Out." Imani watched Karen interact with the passengers ahead of her. She snapped at an elderly man for being too slow. "Sir, the blue line." "Scan it on the blue line." She rolled her eyes at a young mother struggling with a stroller. Just get through, Imani thought. Just get on the plane. Home to Kayla. Imani reached the podium. She smiled politely and held out her phone, the digital boarding pass glowing. Karen didn't look at her face. Her eyes locked immediately with pinpoint accuracy onto Imani's black hard-shell carry-on. It was a Pelican case standard for federal diagnostic equipment. It was exactly the maximum legal dimension. "That won't fit," Karen said flatly. Imani paused, her small faltering. "I'm sorry." "That bag," Karen pointed her finger, jabbing the air. "It's too big. You'll have to check it. Put it in the sizer." The bag sizer was 3 feet away. Imani knew with the certainty of a physicist that the bag would fit. But she also knew the delicate 6-figure diagnostic equipment inside it could not be gate checked. "Ma'am, I assure you it's a standard carry-on. It fits in every overhead bin. It just looks bulky," Imani said, keeping her voice low and pleasant. "It also contains sensitive government-owned electronic equipment that cannot be checked." This was the wrong thing to say. Karen's eyes narrowed. She saw a black woman in a fancy blazer trying to pull one over on her. "Oh, everyone's bag has sensitive equipment. Laptops, cameras. Everyone thinks their bag is special. It's policy. Put it in the sizer, or you're not boarding." The line behind Imani was growing a chorus of impatient steeds and shuffling feet. "I understand your policy," Imani said, her patience worn thin from 72 hours of work beginning to fray. "But I'm telling you this bag is regulation. It will fit. I am also telling you that it cannot under any circumstances be placed in the cargo hold. I'm happy to board and demonstrate that it fits." "No." Karen's voice rose, cracking with authority. "I am the final word at this gate, and I say it's too big. You people always try to argue. You either size it and check it, or you can step aside and we'll rebook you on the next flight. Maybe tomorrow." "You people." The words hung in the air, cold and sharp. Imani felt a flush of anger, hot and familiar. She took a deep, centering breath. Do not let her win. Do not let her make you the stereotype. "There's no need to be disrespectful," Imani said, her voice dropping to a steely calm. "I am a federal employee, and this is federal property. I am not you people. I am a passenger trying to board. Please scan my pass." Karen saw Imani's calmness not as professionalism, but as defiance. She looked down at the boarding pass on Imani's phone. "Hayes, Imani. Seat 2A. First class." Karen's lip curled in a barely concealed sneer. First class. Of course. A federal employee. "Right," Karen scoffed loud enough for the first few people in line to hear. "That's what they all say. Ma'am, I'm going to ask you one last time to step out of my line. And I am telling you," Imani said, her voice now devoid of all warmth, "I am boarding this plane with this bag. It is mission critical." A man behind Imani, wearing a fleece vest and a sneer, piped up. "Just check the bag, lady. Come on, some of us have connections. Let's call him Brad Johnson." Karen felt emboldened by the support. This was her gate, her kingdom. "That's it," Karen snapped. She looked past Imani to the waiting line. "This passenger is non-compliant and delaying the flight. I'm calling security." She reached for the red phone at her podium. Imani stood rooted in disbelief. "This is not happening. Not over a bag. Not today." "Ma'am," Imani said, trying one last time. "My name is Dr. Imani Hayes. Calling security is a gross overreaction. I am simply trying to do my job." Karen was already on the phone. "This is Karen at C-22. I have a hostile passenger first class refusing to follow crew member instructions. She's becoming aggressive. Yes, she's also claiming to be a federal employee to intimidate me." Imani's blood went cold. Claiming to be Karen hung up the phone and gave Imani a look of triumphant malice. "They're on their way. You can explain your mission-critical bag to the Chicago police." The terminal, which had been a dull roar, seemed to fade. Everyone was staring. Phones were already emerging, the little red recording lights winking on. The humiliation was a physical weight. Imani Hayes, a woman who commanded briefing rooms and signed off on the safety of entire airports, was being publicly shamed at a boarding gate by an agent on a power trip. The wait for security was both a lifetime and a heartbeat. It was perhaps only 90 seconds, but it was 90 seconds of intense, suffocating silence. The boarding process had ground to a complete halt. The line of passengers in Group 2, 3, and 4 stood and stared a captive audience to the drama. Karen Foster stood behind her podium, arms crossed, tapping her acrylic nails on the counter. She had the smug look of a hall monitor who had just caught the class president chewing gum. She was performing for the crowd, radiating an aura of, "Look what I have to put up with." Brad Johnson, the man in the fleece vest, muttered, "Some people are so entitled, just loud enough for Imani to hear." Imani stood frozen, her mind racing. She ran through a dozen scenarios. She could just leave. But she had to get to DC for a critical NTSB cross-briefing in the morning. She could check the bag. But the $150 to $1,000 thermal acoustic scanner inside would be destroyed, and she would be liable for it. She could argue. But she knew as a black woman in a confrontation that arguing would only be interpreted as aggression. Don't give her the satisfaction, Imani told herself. Remain calm. Document everything. She calmly took her phone, which was still in her hand, and began to film Karen. "What do you think you're doing?" Karen shrieked, her voice rising an octave. "I'm documenting this interaction," Imani said evenly. "For the record, my name is Dr. Imani Hayes. It is 5:07 p.m. I am a ticketed first-class passenger on Flight 849. I have been denied boarding by this agent Karen Foster, who is refusing to scan my compliant carry-on bag and has accused me of being hostile." Karen's face went purple. "You can't film me. That's illegal. You're harassing me." "It's a public space, ma'am. I am well within my rights," Imani replied. This for Karen was the final straw, being filmed, being challenged with facts. This wasn't just defiance anymore. This was an attack on her authority. You see, Karen yelled to the officers who were just rounding the corner. "She's aggressive. She's threatening me. She's filming me." 2 Chicago airport police officers approached. The first was Officer Miller, a tall, stern-looking man in his 50s with a by-the-book demeanor. The second was his younger partner, Officer Chen. All right, what's going on here?" Officer Miller said, his voice a gravelly baritone that cut through the terminal noise. Karen launched into a high-pitched, frantic explanation. "Thank God you're here." "Officer, this woman," she pointed directly at Imani, "refused to follow my instructions to size her bag. She knows it's too big and she's trying to bully me. She pushed right past the stanchion." "I did no such thing," Imani said, her voice sharp but controlled. "And when I told her no, she got right in my face, started filming me and started threatening me, said she was some federal employee and that I couldn't stop her. She's impersonating a federal officer to try and get on this flight." The accusation landed like a bomb. Impersonating a federal officer. That was a felony. Officer Miller's entire posture changed. He turned his full attention from Karen, the accuser, to Imani, the accused. His hand moved from his side to rest casually but deliberately on his belt near his service weapon. "Ma'am," Miller said to Imani, his voice now stripped of any preliminary kindness, "I need you to step over here away from the gate. Please put your phone away." "Officer, I am filming to protect myself," Imani stated. "This agent is lying. I did not threaten her. I did not push anyone, and I am exactly who I say I am." "I am not going to ask you again," Officer Miller said, stepping closer. "Put the phone away. You are interfering with a security situation." Imani, knowing the optics of a police officer physically taking a phone from a black woman, stopped recording and lowered her hand. But she did not put the phone away. She held it at her side. "Now," Miller said, guiding her a few feet away. The crowd murmured. The college student who had been filming the whole thing zoomed in. "This is ridiculous," Imani said. "I'm an air safety investigator. I'm just trying to get home." "That's what she claims," Karen shouted from the podium. "I've seen it all. People will say anything to get what they want." Officer Miller turned to Imani. "Ma'am, what is in the bag?" "Sensitive diagnostic equipment for my agency," Imani said. "And what agency is that? The Federal Aviation Administration." Officer Miller and Officer Chen exchanged a look. The FAA. That was a big one. But they'd heard stories before. Miller had once arrested a man who flashed a fake CIA badge to try and get a free pretzel. "You have identification, ma'am?" "Something to back up that claim?" Miller asked. His tone was skeptical. He clearly sided with the uniformed airline employee over the disruptive passenger. "Of course I do," Imani said. She was seething. The humiliation of having to prove who she was in the middle of a terminal was a bitter pill. "Okay, let's see it," Miller said. Officer Imani said, "Before I do that, I want to be very clear. Your presence was requested under false pretenses. This agent, Ms. Foster, is the one who has been hostile. She used a derogatory racial term." "I did not," Karen shrieked. "And she is the one who escalated this from a baggage question to a security incident. I want her behavior on record." "We'll get to that," Miller said, his patience wearing thin. "First, I need to know who I'm talking to. You've had a very serious accusation leveled against you. Impersonating a federal officer is a jailable offense, so show me the badge." Brad Johnson, the fleece-vested man, smirked. "Yeah, show him the badge. This'll be good." The terminal was dead quiet. The flight crew, the pilots and flight attendants had peered out from the jet bridge, wondering what was holding up their flight. Imani looked at Officer Miller. She looked at Officer Chen. She looked at Karen, who was vibrating with smug vindication. She looked at the faces in the crowd, some curious, some judgmental, some filming. Fine, she thought. You want to see the badge? Let's end this. She calmly placed her briefcase and carry-on on the floor. She slowly, deliberately reached inside her navy blue blazer to the interior pocket. Karen watched a predatory grin on her face, expecting Imani to pull out nothing, or worse, some fake ID she'd bought online. She leaned forward, eager for the final delicious moment of, "I told you so." Time seemed to slow down. The only sounds in the immediate vicinity of Gate C-22 were the distant echoing announcements for other flights and the faint whir of the ventilation system. Every eye was locked on Imani's hand as it disappeared inside her blazer. Officer Miller shifted his weight, ready to react. Officer Chen subtly moved to Imani's side. Imani's fingers found the familiar worn leather of her credential case. She pulled it out. It was a simple black leather bifold, unadorned on the outside. She did not flash it like in a movie. She didn't flip it open with a snap of her wrist. She held it in her palm and took a measured step toward Officer Miller. She opened it slowly, deliberately, and held it up for his inspection about a foot from his face. The world tilted. On the left side of the bifold was a laminated holographic photo ID. It read, United States of America, Department of Transportation, Dr. Imani K. Hayes, Senior Air Safety Investigator, Federal Aviation Administration, OAS-1, Top Secret, SCI. On the right side, recessed into the leather, was a heavy, gleaming, gold-plated badge. It was not a police shield. It was the official eagle-topped credential of the FAA, bearing the Great Seal of the United States. Officer Miller's eyes widened. He had been a cop for 25 years. He knew a real federal credential when he saw one, and this one was high level, very high level. The OAS-1 was a security clearance designator he recognized from Joint Terrorism Task Force briefings. It was a clearance higher than his own chief's. He swallowed. His skepticism didn't just evaporate, it was sucked into a vacuum. His entire demeanor changed in an instant. His posture, which had been confrontational, snapped ramrod straight. His voice, which had been skeptical, was suddenly filled with a new strained tone respect. "Dr. Hayes," he said, his voice dropping an octave. He cleared his throat. "My apologies, ma'am. We were not aware." He took an involuntary step back as if the badge itself had a physical force. He then turned to his partner, Officer Chen, and gave a sharp, almost imperceptible nod. Chen, who hadn't seen the credentials, clearly immediately understood. He relaxed his posture and stepped away from Imani. Karen Foster from her podium couldn't see the details. She only saw the shift in the officers. Her smugness faltered, replaced by a flicker of confusion. What is it?" she demanded, craning her neck. "What is that?" "Some fake ID officer she's faking." Officer Miller turned his head slowly toward Karen. His expression was now icy. "Ma'am," he said to Karen, his voice dangerously quiet, "this is Dr. Imani Hayes. She is a senior investigator with the Federal Aviation Administration. Her credentials are 100% legitimate." The silence that followed was absolute. It was a void. The grumbling passengers, the man in the fleece vest, the college student filming everyone went stock still. The entire terminal gate area, a space that had been buzzing with 100 conversations, fell as quiet as a church. You could hear the click of the flight information board changing. Fss, click, click, click. Imani closed the credential case with a soft thwump and returned it to her pocket. She looked at Officer Miller. "Officer, as I was saying before, I was interrupted," she said, her voice cutting through the silence. "I was on my way to a critical briefing in Washington. I have now been unlawfully detained, harassed and publicly accused of a felony, impersonating a federal officer by this airline employee." She turned her gaze like a spotlight onto Karen Foster. Karen's face, which had been flushed with anger, was now draining of all color. It was happening in patches, leaving her skin a pasty, mottled white. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She was looking at Imani as if for the first time, not as a problem passenger, but as a figure of immense, terrifying authority. "This is no longer a customer service complaint about a carry-on bag," Imani continued, her voice resonating with cold, hard power. "This is now an official airport security and compliance issue. Your employee, Ms. Foster, has interfered with a federal officer in the performance of her duties." Brad Johnson, the witness in the fleece vest, began to backpedal slowly, trying to melt into the crowd. "Officer Miller," Imani said, not taking her eyes off Karen, "please get this airline's station manager. And while you're at it, get me the airport director of operations, Mr. Robert Harrison. Tell him Dr. Hayes has a situation at gate C-22. Officer Miller blinked. Robert Harrison, the head of the entire airport. "Right away, Dr. Hayes," Miller said. He immediately spoke into his shoulder mic, his voice low and urgent, requesting the white shirts, airline management, and the airport director himself. Karen Foster began to tremble. Her hand, which had been tapping on the counter, was now shaking so hard she had to grip the podium to stay upright. She stammered. It was the bag. It looked too big. It's policy." Imani finally turned her full attention to her. "Was policy, Ms. Foster, to question my first-class ticket?" Was policy to accuse me of aggression when I was standing still? Was policy to accuse me of a federal crime? You based your actions on a personal bias, and you escalated it into this. Imani gestured to the silent crowd, the police officers, the delayed flight. You didn't just make a mistake, Imani said, her voice a surgical tool. You created a security incident at a major international hub, and I'm the person who writes the reports on those incidents. Karen's knees buckled. She leaned heavily on the counter, a high-pitched, terrified ee sound escaping her throat. She was hyperventilating. The Queen of Gate C-22 had just been checkmated. The 90 seconds it took for the police to arrive had felt like an eternity. The 5 minutes it took for management to show up felt like a geological age. During that time, Officer Miller and Officer Chen stood protectively near Imani, not as guards, but as a de facto honor guard. They were no longer detaining her. They were securing the scene for her. Officer Miller formally took down Imani's statement, writing furiously in his notebook as she recounted the incident with perfect chronological clarity. She used the term "you" people after I stated the bag was regulation. She questioned the validity of my first-class ticket. She solicited a false witness statement from another passenger. Brad Johnson, who had tried to disappear, was stopped by Officer Chen. "Sir, I'm going to need to see your ID. You were a witness to this." I didn't see anything." Brad stammered, his face pale. "I just want to get on my flight." "You made a statement that this woman was aggressive," Chen said, his voice flat. "We're going to need your name." Reluctantly, Brad Johnson handed over his driver's license. Meanwhile, Karen Foster had collapsed onto the stool behind her podium. She was rocking back and forth, whispering, "I'm fired. I'm fired. Oh my God, I'm fired." The other gate agent, a younger man who had been handling the computer, looked terrified, as if he'd be fired just for being in the same zip code. The first white shirt to arrive was Mark Jenkins, the airline's duty station manager. He came speed-walking down the concourse, a look of profound annoyance on his face. He was a man who lived by spreadsheets, and a 15-minute delay on a DCA flight was going to ruin his on-time performance numbers. "Karen, what in God's name is this?" he snapped as he arrived, not yet grasping the situation. "Officer, what's the problem? We have a plane to launch. Let's get this passenger rebooked and—" "Mr. Jenkins," Imani interrupted. Mark Jenkins turned, finally noticing Imani. He saw a well-dressed black woman flanked by 2 police officers. He immediately defaulted to appease the angry customer mode. "Ma'am, I'm Mark Jenkins, the station manager. I understand there's been a misunderstanding. Whatever Ms. Foster did, I assure you—" "Mr. Jenkins," Imani said, cutting him off again, her tone leaving no room for his platitudes. "Your misunderstanding involves your agent detaining me, accusing me of impersonating a federal officer, and forcing me to expose my high-level security credentials in an unsecured public environment." Mark Jenkins froze. His oily customer service smile evaporated. I beg your pardon. Dr. Imani Hayes, FAA, she said, holding his gaze. Your agent, Ms. Foster, caused this security delay. She was unprofessional, discriminatory, and has made a number of false accusations to the Chicago PD. I have already requested the CCTV footage from this gate, and I will be filing a formal complaint with the Department of Transportation, which will trigger a full investigation of this station's compliance and training protocols. Mark Jenkins's world caved in. This wasn't an angry passenger. This was a regulator. This was the woman who could, with a stroke of a pen, ground his entire operation. His career flashed before his eyes. Karen, he whispered, turning to his agent. What did you do?" Karen was sobbing. I just... The bag, I was following the rules." She wouldn't listen. "Mr. Jenkins," Imani said, "was your employee following the rules when she decided based on my appearance that I couldn't possibly be a federal officer? Or was she perhaps acting on a bias that you foster in your staff?" "No, absolutely not. We have diversity training," Jenkins sputtered, pulling at his collar. It was at that exact moment that the real big gun arrived. Robert Harrison. O'Hare's director of operations came striding down the concourse. Harrison was ex-Air Force, a man who ran the world's busiest airport with military precision. He was flanked by his own chief of security. He looked grim. He had gotten a call from dispatch that an FAA DOT situation was unfolding at C-22. He saw the cops. He saw his cowering airline manager. And then he saw Imani, and his blood ran cold. "Dr. Hayes," Harrison boomed, pushing past Jenkins. "I was just tracking your flight. I got your preliminary report this morning, but my God, what is going on here? Are you all right?" This was the twist that silenced everyone again. Mark Jenkins and Karen Foster stared in horror. This wasn't just an FAA agent. This was the FAA agent who had been auditing their airport for the past 3 days. The one whose final report everyone was terrified of. Imani gave Harrison a small, grim nod. "Rob, I'm fine. But I'm afraid your airport has a problem. As does this airline." Harrison's face darkened. He turned to Mark Jenkins, his voice dropping to a dangerous glacial calm. "Mr. Jenkins, you have 60 seconds to explain to me why one of the FAA's top investigators is being detained at your gate." Mark Jenkins looked like he was going to be sick. He pointed a trembling finger at Karen. It was her, my agent Karen Foster. She made a judgment error." "A judgment error?" Imani echoed. "She accused me of a felony, Mr. Jenkins. She delayed this flight. She created a public spectacle and a security incident. That's a bit more than a judgment error." Harrison looked at Karen Foster. He didn't know her, but he knew her type. He had spent his career rooting out the kind of toxic, little tyrant attitude she embodied. "Ms. Foster," Harrison said, his voice flat, "give me your CEDA badge." The request was so simple, so quiet, it was more devastating than a scream. A CEDA badge, Security Identification Display Area, is the key to an airport employee's life. It's the federally mandated ID that allows them access to secure areas, including gates, the tarmac, and baggage. Without it, you can't even get to the employee cafeteria. Having it revoked by the airport director himself was the career equivalent of a public execution. Karen Foster looked at Robert Harrison, her tear-streaked face a mask of utter disbelief. Mr. Harrison, sir. It was a mistake. I was just trying to enforce the rules." "The bag, your rules," Harrison said, his voice like gravel, "do not include harassing federal officials. They do not include making biased accusations. And they certainly do not include delaying operations and creating a security incident. Your employment at this airport is over. Give me the badge." He held out his hand. With a shaking, fumbling motion, Karen undid the clip on her lanyard. The plastic ID with her photo and Karen F. printed on it swung back and forth. She unclipped it, and with a choked sob, placed it in Robert Harrison's palm. But, she whimpered. "Mr. Jenkins," Harrison said, turning to the station manager, not even sparing Karen another glance. "Have her escorted from the secure area, immediately. She is no longer cleared for access." Mark Jenkins, eager to deflect the heat from himself, nodded frantically. "Yes, sir. Right away, sir." He motioned to Officer Chen. "Officer, could you—" Officer Chen, now tasked with escorting the former gate agent, nodded. "Ma'am, let's go." Karen Foster, the woman who seconds before had wielded absolute power over Gate C-22, was now being led away like a common criminal, weeping hysterically. "This isn't fair. I was just doing my job. This isn't fair." Her cries echoed down the concourse until she was gone. The terminal was silent, save for her fading wails. Now Harrison turned his ice-cold gaze on Mark Jenkins. "Mr. Jenkins," Harrison said, "Dr. Hayes has just spent 72 hours on my airfield inspecting my runways to ensure the safety of your airplanes. She is at this moment arguably the most important person in this building, and your team treated her like a criminal. What exactly is your diversity training protocol? A laminated card you hand out at Christmas. Sir, Mr. Harrison, we will be conducting an immediate internal review." Jenkins stammered, sweat beading on his forehead and dripping down his temples. "You're damned right you will," Imani cut in. "And I'll be expecting a copy of that review, along with a full report on the retraining of all your ground staff nationwide. Because this wasn't just one bad apple, Mr. Jenkins. This was a systemic failure. Your employee felt empowered to act this way. That culture comes from her management. It comes from you." Jenkins flinched as if he'd been struck. He knew in that moment his own career at O'Hare was over. He wouldn't be fired. The airline would hate the paperwork. But a transfer was coming. He'd be managing the baggage claim in Omaha or Sioux Falls by the end of the month. Finally, Imani turned her attention to the last piece of the puzzle. She pointed to Brad Johnson, who was still being detained by Officer Miller. "And him," she said. Brad's face went white. "Me, I didn't do anything. I was just standing here." "No," Imani said. "You provided a false corroborating statement to a police officer during a security incident. You told them I was aggressive. You deliberately inflamed the situation." I thought you were—" he blustered. "Officer Miller," Imani asked, "do you have his information?" Miller flipped his notebook. "Yes, Dr. Hayes. Brad Johnson. He's on this flight. Seat 24B. "Mr. Johnson," Imani said, "interfering with a federal officer or providing false information to law enforcement in a secure airport area are both, what's the word, ill-advised." "Now wait a minute," Brad protested. Imani looked at Robert Harrison. "Mr. Harrison, I trust the airline will be reviewing Mr. Johnson's conduct as a passenger." Harrison nodded grimly. He looked at Jenkins. "Mr. Jenkins, see to it that Mr. Johnson's feedback is logged in his passenger profile. I'm sure your corporate security will be interested in a passenger who provides false witness statements during a police matter." Brad Johnson's bravado evaporated. He was a 100K-mile premier 1K flyer. His status was his life. He knew what logging feedback meant. He was going to be on a corporate watch list. This is unbelievable," he muttered, defeated. "No," Imani said, finally picking up her bags. "This is accountability." She looked at Mr. Harrison. "Rob, I need to get to DC. I trust my bag is no longer an issue." Harrison let out a short, sharp laugh. "Dr. Hayes, you could bring a live alligator on board at this point, and I'd clear it. Please, go." He gestured to the jet bridge where the pilots and flight attendants were watching with wide, stunned eyes. "Mr. Jenkins," Harrison said as a final thought, "you will be personally apologizing to every passenger on this flight for the delay your employee caused. You will not mention Dr. Hayes. You will state it was an internal staffing issue. Am I clear?" "Crystal, sir." Jenkins whispered, his humiliation complete. Imani gave a single curt nod to Harrison. She gave a nod of thanks to Officers Miller and Chen. Then, without a backward glance at the manager or the passengers, she walked down the jet bridge, her black hard-shell carry-on rolling silently behind her. The entire terminal watched her go. The moment she disappeared into the plane, a low murmur erupted like the entire gate had just exhaled at once. The college student's phone, which had been recording the entire 15-minute encounter, finally lowered. The video was already uploading. Imani boarded the plane and was greeted by the lead flight attendant, a woman named Jennifer, at the door. "Dr. Hayes," Jennifer said, her voice low and respectful. The entire crew had heard the confrontation over the gate's PA system. "I'm so sorry for what you just experienced. Please let me take your coat. Your seat is 2A. "Thank you, Jennifer," Imani said, the adrenaline finally beginning to ebb, leaving her exhausted. "I'd appreciate that." As she walked to her seat, the passengers in the first-class cabin all stared. She ignored them, slipped into her window seat, and buckled her belt. She placed her Pelican case under the seat in front of her, where it fit with inches to spare. The rest of the passengers began to file on. When Brad Johnson walked past her to get to his middle seat in coach, he refused to make eye contact. A few minutes later, the station manager, Mark Jenkins, boarded the plane and took the cabin microphone. His face was ashen. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice trembling. "On behalf of the airline, I want to offer my deepest apologies for the delay. We had an unexpected internal staffing issue at the gate that required our immediate attention. We failed to provide the seamless service you expect, and for that we are truly sorry. We will be doing everything we can to make up the time in the air. Thank you for your patience." He practically ran off the plane. As the cabin door closed, the lead flight attendant, Jennifer, came to Imani's seat. "Dr. Hayes," she whispered, leaning down. "I've already spoken to the captain. We are appalled. That Agent Karen has been a terror to the flight crews for years. We've filed complaints. Nothing was ever done. You did something today that we've been trying to do for a decade." She smiled. "Your first drink is on us, but I suspect your ticket already covers that. But the whole bottle of champagne is also on us, and the good snacks. From the crew." Imani finally allowed herself a small, tired smile. "Thank you, Jennifer. That's very kind. Honestly, I'd just like a club soda and to get home to my daughter." "You've got it," Jennifer said. As the plane took off, pushing through the clouds over Chicago, Imani looked out the window. The incident replayed in her mind. The humiliation, the anger, the "you people." The sheer smug audacity of Karen Foster. The cold dread when she saw the police. But then she thought of the silence, the look on Officer Miller's face, the way Harrison hadn't even hesitated, the way Karen's entire petty kingdom had crumbled to dust in an instant because it was built on a foundation of sand and bias. She had been profiled, yes, but for once the system she worked for had in turn worked for her. She was, however, far from finished. This wasn't just about one agent. This was about a system that allowed a Karen Foster to flourish. Her report wouldn't just be about tarmac safety. It was about to get a very, very large addendum. When she landed at DCA, she turned on her phone. It exploded. She had 42 new text messages. The video filmed by the college student at the gate had been posted to TikTok and Twitter. It was everywhere. It already had 1 million views. The caption, "Gate agent goes on racist power trip and gets instantly fired by the FAA." Her phone rang. It was Robert Harrison from O'Hare. "Imani," he said, his voice weary. "You've landed, I see. Look, I'm calling to personally apologize and to let you know the media has the video. Our PR team is, well, they're in meltdown. The airlines is even worse." "Good," Imani said. Good, okay. "Well, I'm suspending Mark Jenkins pending a full review, and I've already recommended to the TSA that Ms. Foster's SEDA clearance be permanently revoked nationwide." This was the karma. Fired was one thing. A permanent nationwide revocation meant she could never work in a secure area of any US airport again. She couldn't even get a job at a Sbarro if it was behind the security checkpoint. Her airport career in any capacity was over. Forever. "That's a start, Rob," Imani said, gathering her bags. "What else?" he asked. "A mandatory airline-wide retraining on federal credential recognition and bias avoidance. And I want to help design it." "Done," Harrison said without hesitation. "Consider it done. Get home safe, Doctor." Imani hung up. As she walked through the terminal at DCA, a TSA agent at the exit checkpoint looked at her, looked again and smiled. "Dr. Hayes?" he asked. Imani sighed. "Yes." "I just saw the video. Good for you," he said, giving her a respectful nod. "Welcome to DC." The fallout was not quiet. It was a deafening corporate explosion, and its shock waves would permanently alter the landscape of the entire airline. When Dr. Imani Hayes landed at DCA, she turned her phone off airplane mode. It didn't vibrate. It convulsed. It was a solid, buzzing brick of notifications. 400 new emails, 128 text messages, 27 missed calls, 3 from Robert Harrison, 2 from her own director at the FAA, and most bizarrely, a half-dozen from unknown numbers in New York. The press. The video filmed by the college student had been uploaded with the title, "Racist Gate Agent Freaks Out, Tries to Arrest Black Woman, Who Turns Out to Be Her FAA Boss." While not technically accurate, it was emotionally true. It had 3.5 million views. It was the #1 trending topic on Twitter. She watched it standing by the baggage claim. She saw herself stone still and professional, while Karen Foster shrieked about impersonation and aggression. She saw the terror in Karen's eyes the moment she realized who Imani was. She saw the white shirts arrive, their faces pale. Her phone rang again. It was Robert Harrison. "Imani," he said. He sounded like he hadn't slept in a year. "You've landed." I've been on the phone with the airline's CEO, David Roth. He's seen the video. He's seen all the videos. He wants to fly to DC tomorrow to apologize to you in person." "That won't be necessary," Imani said, the exhaustion hitting her like a wave. "An apology is a start. But I want a solution." "Dr. Hayes, you have his full undivided attention," Harrison said. "He's already in a crisis meeting. Their stock is projected to drop 5% at the opening bell. This is a $500 million misunderstanding for them. You frankly can write your own ticket." "I don't want a ticket, Rob," Imani said, rubbing her temples. "I want training. I want accountability." "Oh, accountability is here," Harrison said grimly. "And it's just getting started." Karen's escort from the gate was her walk of shame. Officer Chen led her not through the public concourse, but through the grey concrete block staff hallways in the airport's underbelly. She was taken to the airport badging office, a sterile, windowless room. Robert Harrison was already there. He didn't speak to her. He simply slid her cider badge, the one she had wept, as she surrendered to the badging officer. "Permanent revocation. TSA notification. Effective immediately." The officer, who had probably seen Karen on her lunch break 100 times, didn't look up. He stamped her file with a heavy red-inked stamp. Terminated. Security threat. Do not rehire. She was fingerprinted. She was photographed again, this time for the barred list. She was then led to her back door, a nondescript metal exit that opened onto a service road and was unceremoniously deposited outside the secure perimeter. She had to call her husband to pick her up from a bus stop. She, of course, tried to sue. Her union-appointed lawyer, after watching the 15-minute high-definition video from the college student, which had crystal-clear audio of the "you people" comment, and the impersonating a federal officer accusation, gently informed her there was no case. "Karen," the lawyer said, "you didn't just break company policy. You didn't just violate their diversity and inclusion guidelines. You broke federal airport security rules. You interfered with a federal officer. You leveled a false accusation. You created the security incident. The airline isn't just firing you. They're making an example of you. If you sue, they will countersue for the cost of the delayed flight, the PR damage, and the mandatory retraining of 80,000 employees. You'll be in debt for the rest of your life." Her lawsuit vanished. Her career was gone. The SIDA revocation meant she couldn't work for any airline, any airport vendor, or even any duty-free shop in any airport in the United States ever again. She was utterly blacklisted. The last anyone heard, Karen Foster was working at a Jo-Ann Fabrics in suburban Illinois. A flight attendant on her day off recognized her while buying yarn. The flight attendant said nothing. She just stared, then slowly, deliberately shook her head. Karen burst into tears and ran to the break room. Mark Jenkins thought he could weather the storm. He had thrown Karen under the bus. He had groveled. He had promised internal reviews. The next morning, he received an 8:01 a.m. email from the Vice President of North American Operations. The subject, mandatory reassignment. He was called into a video meeting with the VP, who looked like he'd been chewing on tinfoil. Mark, the VP, said, "O'Hare is our flagship hub, and its airport director, Mr. Harrison, has informed us that your presence in his terminal is, and I quote, no longer conducive to a positive operational partnership. You're a non-person at O'Hare, Mark." "So, a transfer Denver-Dallas?" Jenkins asked, his heart sinking. The VP gave a bitter laugh. "You're not staying on the continent. You've embarrassed us in front of the FAA. We need you to go somewhere quiet, somewhere you can reflect on your management style." "Where?" Jenkins whispered. "Antonio B., One Pat International Airport, Guam. You're the new station manager. You'll oversee our once-daily island hopper flight to Honolulu." It was a career execution. He was being exiled to a tiny, humid office with a single employee 8,000 miles away in a different hemisphere. He would lose his regional bonus. His wife, who was a high-powered lawyer in Chicago, filed for divorce within the month. His kingdom had shrunk to a single fold-out table and a perpetually broken air conditioner. Brad Johnson, the witness in the fleece vest, landed at his destination and immediately took to Twitter. Got delayed at ORD by some woke lady who thought she was all-powerful. Had to pull the race card and call in her friends to get on the plane. Unbelievable. His tweet was up for 4 minutes. In that time, it was screenshotted and cross-referenced with the viral video. The next day, Brad tried to log into his airline account to book his next flight. He was a 1K flyer. His status was his personality. His password didn't work. He reset it. He logged in. Status member mileage balance. 0. He stared. His 1.2 million saved miles were gone. His 1K status was gone. He called the 1K for Life dedicated phone line. Instead of the usual "Hello, Mr. Johnson," he got a recording. Your estimated wait time is 4 hours and 22 minutes. He was in the general public queue. When he finally got an agent, her voice was cold. "Yes, Mr. Johnson, I see the note. Your account has been permanently terminated. A letter is being sent to your address." The letter from the airline's corporate security and legal department was brutal. It stated that his actions, providing a knowingly false witness statement to law enforcement and publicly harassing another passenger, his tweet, were a violation of the passenger carriage contract. His status miles and all future booking privileges were voided. He was in effect banned for life from the airline. He was a consultant who flew 200,000 miles a year. He was now forced to fly Spirit and Frontier, paying for his carry-on bag every single time. 2 weeks later, Dr. Imani Hayes sat at the head of a gleaming mahogany table in the airline's Chicago headquarters. At the table were the CEO, the VP of Operations, the head of legal, and the VP of Human Resources. Robert Harrison was there too, representing the airport. "My concern," Imani said, her voice echoing in the silent boardroom, "is not what happened to me. I had credentials. I had a badge. My concern is for the passengers who don't. The you people who don't have an FAA shield in their pocket." She slid a folder across the table. "This," she said, "is the Hayes Protocol. It's a new mandatory training module for every public-facing employee. It's not just about diversity. It's about de-escalation, bias recognition, and federal credential identification. It teaches agents that their authority is for safety, not for ego." The CEO, David Roth, opened it. It was brilliant. It was precise. It was unarguable. "Dr. Hayes," Roth said, "this is comprehensive. We'll implement it. Every quarter. For every employee. And we'll be funding a new scholarship in your name for women in aviation safety." "Thank you," Imani said. "Now let's talk about the section on baggage." 6 months later, Imani Hayes was once again at O'Hare Gate C-22. She walked up to the podium. The gate agent was the young man, Thomas, who had been working the computer next to Karen. He was now the lead agent. He saw her, and his eyes widened, but not in fear, in recognition. He smiled, a bright, genuine smile. "Dr. Hayes," he said, his voice clear and professional. "Welcome. It's an honor to have you on our flight to DCA today." A new trainee next to him looked at Imani with wide-eyed awe. "Thomas," Imani said, smiling back. "Good to see you." "I just wanted you to know," Thomas said, lowering his voice slightly. "I took your Hayes Protocol training. It was the best course I have had in my 5 years here. It changed how we do things." "I'm so glad to hear that, Thomas," she said. He scanned her phone. You're all set. By the way, there's a permanent note on your passenger file. I just saw it. Imani paused. A note. Oh, a good note, he said quickly. It's a Hayes VIP flag. It just says, extend all gate and in-flight courtesy. Do not question carry-on, ever. But honestly, he added with a wink, that's the rule for everyone now. We just call a manager if there's an actual on-fire problem. Imani laughed. A real light, unburdened laugh. She boarded the plane. She sat in seat 2A. She placed her black hard-shell carry-on under the seat in front of her. It fit as it always had. The system wasn't perfect, but on this day, at this gate, it was better. And as the plane took off, she looked out of the window at the city, knowing she had done more than just her job. She had made a change, and this time she would be home well before her daughter's bedtime. And just like that, the terminal fell silent. That FAA badge wasn't just a piece of metal. It was a mirror reflecting Karen's and the airline's deep-seated bias. This wasn't just a victory for Dr. Imani Hayes. It was a win for everyone who has ever been singled out, disbelieved or told they don't look the part. Karma arrived at gate C-22, and it was wearing a federal badge. What do you think of this story? Was Karen's firing and blacklisting enough? Was the manager's demotion to Guam deserved? And what about Brad Johnson, the witness who lost all his miles? Have you ever seen an abuse of power get shut down so perfectly? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this story of instant karma and long-lasting justice, please do me a favor and hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Be sure to share this video with anyone who needs to see a story where the bully finally gets what's coming to them. And most importantly, if you haven't already subscribed to this channel for more incredible real-life stories where the powerful are held accountable. Don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss a single update.